How much power did Frieza gain between Resurrection F and the Tournament of Power? Well, in this video, we're going to discuss that. So how we're going to begin this episode is how we usually do, which is by examining just how strong Frieza was in Resurrection F after he returned from the dead with the help of the Dragon Balls. And then after that point, we're going to examine his time in Hell, during which he trained, and, of course, compare him to the other characters such as Son Goku, and his own increases throughout the period of time when Frieza was dead again. And then finally, how powerful Frieza was when he came back for his one-day visit to compete in the Tournament of Power to help save the universe for a change. So let's begin with his strength in Resurrection F. Now, of course, before that point, we had seen plenty of Frieza's strength, including various different numbers and figures that were given on Namek in his arc in Dragon Ball Z, in which we were told that Frieza's first form, his most suppressed form, had a power level of 530,000. His next form had a power level of over 1 million. And the forms after that weren't given any particular increase with each additional transformation that we're actually informed of, but it's often thought by the fans to be a doubling effect. So it would be something along the lines of 2 million for his third form, and then maybe around 4 million at his most suppressed in his final form, going up to his full power of 120 million at 100% in his most bulky form when he fought against Super Saiyan Goku. However, of course, after that point, Frieza was beaten by Goku and then helped to be rebuilt by his Frieza Force under the command of his father King Cold, in which he came back to the Earth as Mecha Frieza, an even more powerful version of himself with a power level greater than what he was on Namek, and possibly even greater than the initial Super Saiyan Goku that he had fought in the previous arc. Regardless, he was still cut down and killed by Future Trunks at this point, and despite the fact that the spiritual body he had in Hell in his cocoon did appear to keep his mecha enhancements, when he was brought back from the dead and put into the healing chamber and then fully resurrected, he no longer had them, and presumably didn't necessarily keep that level of power anymore. So at this point in time, what level of power would you say, MJ, that Frieza was here?
I do have this weird idea to think that Frieza would have been weaker than what he was on Namek.
Just as I suspected, my skills have grown a bit rusty around the edges. It seems I may need to wait a tad longer before exacting my sweet revenge.
He still seemed to imply that he wasn't at his best and he needed to immediately start training to take out Goku, and I'm pretty sure this was already even before they started to mention the fact that Goku fought Boo and fought Beerus, and that's when he praised Goku and said, okay, then I must train for 4 months then. I must, I need to get strong enough to fight this guy who's even fought Boo and Beerus.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, even before the movie came out, there was the implication that Frieza might have gotten somewhat rusty during his time in Hell, which makes a little bit of sense because unlike what we're going to talk about very shortly, Frieza during his time in Hell was there for significantly longer, and he didn't really have any reason to believe that he would ever be able to come back, and at that point he had never actually trained before, so whereas Frieza is a very stubborn character and it made sense that he wouldn't allow himself to be purged and reincarnated as a new person because after all, he is Frieza, the Emperor of the Universe. In the case of what we're going to be talking about shortly, he did have some precedence for being brought back in Resurrection F, and as a result probably had some hope remaining inside of him that he would be brought back again eventually, or maybe that he'd be able to break out of Hell, which would have been kind of funny to see. Now this leads of course into Frieza's training, because one of the big plot points of what happens in Resurrection F is that Frieza goes on to train for 4 months. But nonetheless, Frieza gained a gigantic boost in power, perhaps the biggest boost we had ever seen in the history of the franchise, not only up until that point, but maybe ever since then as well, as Frieza not only went from being stronger than himself on Namek and surpassing Super Saiyan Goku, but literally leapfrogging every single character in Dragon Ball Z, hero and villain alike, and Super Saiyan God Goku, to being even stronger than the brand new form of Super Saiyan Blue Goku with his Golden Frieza form. And at the same time, even in his base form, he was comparable to base Goku, who at this point had absorbed the power of Super Saiyan God into his body, and as we had seen, had far surpassed everything else that came before in Dragon Ball Z in just that base form, and was able to spar against Beerus and hold back his massive blast without even transforming, up until the point to where he tapped back into that red form. So naturally, you and I have discussed this in a video that you guys can see in the top right corner, where we talked about how powerful Golden Frieza was at the time of this fight. But overall, to kind of sum that up, MJ, how strong do you think that Golden Frieza was here, and just how much stronger than Goku would you place him?
Well, looking back at that arc after it's been a few years now, and at the movie as well, it's safe to say that Golden Frieza was stronger than Goku, and it was by a good amount, because it is implied at the beginning of their fight that Frieza could have killed Goku if he wanted to. Even Goku kind of laughs about that as well, and that's essentially what sets the tone for that battle. That battle is Goku kind of analyzing Frieza in his new form. It's Goku constantly like on the defensive, you know, where Golden Frieza's constantly coming after him, shooting blasts all over the place and everything, and Goku's almost running the clock, it seems. Like he's waiting for the timer to run out, which is what gets explained to us later in the fight between Goku and Vegeta and that conversation they have about Golden Frieza. But it's safe to say that Frieza was stronger than Super Saiyan Blue Goku, and it's not even just the anime or the movie that's telling you this, or the implication of their fight. Is also the fact that there was a guide that came out recently, The Degree of Danger, Dragon Ball Super Rivals, where it discusses the power of Golden Frieza after being resurrected. Frieza, in the ROF arc, an emperor ruling over the galaxies, is said to have surpassed even Super Saiyan Blue Goku. So Frieza was indeed stronger than this new godly form. And think about this for a second, guys. Goku, with just his red form, with very little training in that form and in that body, was able to almost cause the entire destruction of the Dragon Ball macrocosm with Beerus.
And remember, the macrocosm relates not only to the living universe, but the afterlife, which is larger than the normal universe in which our characters and their living bodies occupy, and also the other connected dimensions, such as the Supreme Kai realm that is orbiting around it, in which we actually see the ripples reaching far beyond, even into there, and the characters freaking out and saying that with a couple more clashes, everything will cease to be. So that goes to show you just how incredibly powerful these characters were, that just the shock waves of these punches that were slightly out of alignment and not even directed at the universe around them would in fact be causing that much damage. It goes to tell you just how much damage they could have done if they were purposely trying to cause this damage to the universe, as opposed to only doing it by accident.
And Golden Frieza surpassed all of that with just 4 months of training.
Gotta love Frieza, but as we've talked about in the past, or at least as I did in a video on my channel that you could see up here, Frieza may very well have broken power scaling in Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, which of course we're talking about in this video here because Frieza went on to get significantly more powerful, as we're going to talk about very shortly. But despite the fact that Frieza is more powerful than Goku, he ends up having the same kind of weakness that he had on Namek, with that being his stamina, as throughout the course of the fight he loses more and more power, to where he punches Goku in the face and can't even hurt him, and eventually he's on the ground basically throwing a temper tantrum and not able to win, which is when Sorbet comes in one of the most consistent and logical moments in the entire franchise that's totally making sense, totally guys, and blasts Goku with a common ray gun that goes right through him, leading to Vegeta coming in and beating down Frieza, knocking him out of his golden form, and almost killing him, only for Frieza to blow up the earth, Whis resetting it, and Goku getting the final win, and not making me furious at all in the movie theater. But either way, after this, Frieza goes right back to where he started the movie, in Hell, and back to his cocoon, where he spends the next couple of years, or however much indeterminable amount of time passes in Dragon Ball Super at any point, and he goes back to training. And what kind of training does he exactly do when he's there?
So unlike last time when Frieza was in Hell, this was a Frieza who has trained. This was a Frieza who has understood the idea of how to better yourself as not only as a fighter, but as an actual martial artist. And we see this because it is told to us later in the story that Frieza, while in Hell, in between the time of ROF and the TOP, he underwent extreme mental training to increase his overall power and to make him a stronger warrior than what he even was when he was alive and training his body in a more physical way during ROF. A part of this mental concentration was image training. Now, we've seen image training in the series before, like with Goku back in early Dragon Ball. We've seen Krillin and Gohan do it on their way to Namek, which probably helped increase their power by a good margin in between the Saiyan arc and the Namek arc, since they were presented as overall being stronger when they arrived on Namek. And then you have characters like Piccolo, who is an extreme advocate of image training and mental concentration. We constantly see him meditating throughout the years. And then a good part of this is even seeing Goku hypothetically do image training during the Buu arc, which is something that Mike and I have discussed about in his video, which you can see in the description of this video and on this channel. That is, how much power did Goku gain between the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga. And of course, a good and recent example in Dragon Ball Super would be Goku when he did image training and fought against Kid Buu, Frieza, and Cell at the start of the series. So again, we've seen characters utilize image training to increase their power by a good margin, and Frieza utilized this to the utmost fullest while he was in his cocoon.
And one of the biggest things that Frieza lacked, and also the same could be said for pretty much everyone else in his army, was the connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. Because all of them only really saw their power as simply brute strength, as mere numbers, as science, as something that could be broken down numerically with power levels. However, Frieza, through his exposure to Goku, much like Vegeta, much like Piccolo, and all these other characters, came to understand more about training and more about the connection between their mind, body, and spirit. And so that's one of the biggest reasons why Frieza had this big boost that he got when he was image training in Hell. And this is something that we actually see reflected in his Golden Frieza form when he comes back from the dead for his one-day visit, as he tells Goku right when they're about to be attacked by the assassins from the other universe that are trying to prevent them from going to the Tournament of Power, Golden Frieza has evolved as a form. It's no longer something that significantly drains his stamina. Instead, as he says, because of his training, as a result, my energy control skills have dramatically improved. He has the delicacy that wouldn't even stir water, together with the ultimate intensity in the true Golden Frieza. So, as we see not only here and then afterward in his brief sparring fight with Goku, and then the Tournament of Power itself, Frieza's golden form has significantly improved and increased in its versatility than it was during the Resurrection F movie and arc.
As a result of how much Frieza has improved his Golden Frieza form, you guys have to remember, it's not just about the ki control, it's the fact that he also got incredibly powerful. When he transforms into true Golden Frieza, you see a terror on Goku's face like no other. You see him light up the entire planet. Everyone on the planet takes notice, which is why Beerus and Whis eventually come later to check on Goku. Goku for a split second looked like, what did I just get myself into after seeing Golden Frieza in his new state? This wasn't even a look that Super Saiyan Blue Goku had on his face back in ROF. Frieza was an animal, and he went on to decimate every single assassin of Universe 9, and no one stood a chance. Not even the leader of that group, who had the power of Hakai within his hands.
And that leader threw a Hakai blast directly at Frieza that came from his god of destruction in Universe 9, Sidra, which Frieza originally was enveloped in, but then was able to condense and hold in his own hands. Something that base Goku wasn't able to do himself, which I also discussed in this video that you can see right here in the top right corner. Now, that goes to show you just how powerful Frieza is, and as you've discussed, there's a possibility that Frieza might in some way scale up to Sidra, because as we've seen and as it's been heavily implied throughout the course of Dragon Ball Super, the gods of destruction likely do have varying degrees of strength among them.
Yeah, you are right, Mike, especially in the anime version where their scaling is a bit more ambiguous. It seems to be that there are different levels to their power, and in episode 95, it's heavily implied by Universe 9's own Kaioshin that if they were to take Frieza on their team, and if he wanted to like go out on his own and screw the team over, the Kaioshin wondered, could Sidra even stop him? So that makes you think just how strong Frieza has actually gotten, to the point to where he's actually scaling to some of these lower tier gods of destruction.